How has performing those huge shows of Depeche Mode changed your sonic horizons of like how big the room is?
Firstly, just to say, David Byrne, as with many people, changed a lot for me, and I owe him so much because Stop Making Sense was one of the first records I ever bought. And Talking Heads, you know, I used to play bass in a band, and Tina Weymouth, my first bass was called Tina, after Tina Weymouth. His mind has changed my mind in so many ways. So just shout out to David Byrne, first and foremost.
You read the book?
I have read the book because I was trying to get into music. I've read several of his books because there was no roadmap. And especially as a working class artist, it was like, how do I go about this, you know? But that is why having community is important, because you have to ask the questions and there are people there to help and support you along the way. But of course, Depeche Mode, I think the lowest number of people I played in front of was around 20,000 a night, and the maximum 75,000 times 3 in 1 week in Mexico, which, I mean, the fans in Mexico are unbelievable. Yeah. They are obsessed with music. They're obsessed with having the best time ever. They know how to live life really well. So I was very lucky I could go there with Depeche, but I felt so embraced in that space. Strangely, I thrive the bigger the audience. I had...
well, they almost become dehumanized, don't they, at that scale? Like if you played for like 4 or 5 people, it would feel quite weirdly intimate. Yes. That's what some people have told me anyway. They feel like it's not as dehumanized, but it's not as nerve-wracking as being in a smaller room where you can see people.
I think seeing people's faces definitely is always something. But I feel differently. I when I step on a stage with lots of people, I feel challenged to keep it so human and reach the back of that room. When I actually had Daniel Miller, who signed Depeche Mode, obviously, and him and I became friends, and he said to me, I just wanted to say I've seen a lot of support acts over the years, and that was one of the best I've ever seen. So congratulations. He said, you reached the back of that room, and it was just me on stage, you know? And so he helped to give me some confidence that I could fill that space. But I'd say the main thing is thinking about my production value. After that tour, I scrapped everything and I went back to the drawing room, and I made sure that everything that I did was about reaching as many people as possible. Also, my voice changed. So the way that my voice is now in comparison even to just 3 years ago is unreal. I decided to take singing lessons for the first time to make sure I was breathing properly and all these things. But basically, I feel like everything in me expanded for the better. And the confidence that Depeche Mode gave me just by asking me to be a part of their world was, I'll just never forget that. And I'm so thankful for it.
It's such an extraordinary band as well.
Yeah.
So you recently played a show, and I'm going to try and pronounce it, in Nayad Owen.
Nayad Ogwen.
Ogwen.
Nayad Ogwen. I'm saying that again closer into the mic so you can hear me.
You said it was really important to do community shows kind of from where you're from. What was special about that show and how did it feel?
It's not often I feel like I can't speak. But let's just say the night before I played the Warehouse Project, which is iconic, and every single room is curated beautifully. I got to play the Stone Roses. It was such a special moment. But I will say the next day, playing in Bethesda to 200 people, I will never forget that show as long as I live. They took no moment for granted. I had a 10-year-old on one side of the DJ booth. I'm not kidding. And a 70-year-old, something-year-old on the other side. Yeah. When we talk about community, like this guy who's in his 70s, he was at the raves in the quarries in the 90s. Yeah. He's seen it all. This 10-year-old guy was a DJ, inspired by what I do. Wow. I couldn't believe it. My mum was there, Girls Love Techno t-shirt. It was one of the most incredible atmospheres. And I played there a year earlier with Caribou, which is really what inspired it. And they went all out with the production for us. And I would love to do something more regularly there because that's what's needed. And nobody really comes to North Wales because Manchester or Liverpool is maybe an hour or so away. And so I have to put my money where my mouth is and just show up and let people know that they matter. And I think it's inspired me to maybe do sort of smaller venues like that in places that people wouldn't normally go to. And I might work with the Music Venue Trust to figure out where those places are, because it genuinely was one of the best nights I've ever played at.
I think, like, I grew up in a seaside town where the last transport was like 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
So you couldn't go to stuff.
Yeah.
And you feel quite cut off. And like, we now live in such a like globalized world, but people are still kind of like, they can't just go to a show in Manchester.
Yep.
They can't just pop to Liverpool.
No. And it's also expensive as well. So I reduced the tickets. I think tickets were like £12 or something. Yeah. I'm not making money, but that's not the point of that particular show.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think that the levels of community that we need and what scenes need, and like, I guess almost like to radicalize people as music fans, like we are, to become obsessed with music. Like,
and you can't be what you can't see.
Yeah.
So someone from like where you're from or where I'm from, you know, people come up to me, for example, saying, it's really inspiring what you're doing. It's making me feel like I could do it. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
And that talent that would otherwise just be dormant, it needs to be encouraged. It needs to be found. You have to kind of go to them, right? That's my way of thinking. And obviously we know there's a huge issue at the moment in terms of working class artists, and that percentage like going down year after
even
year
worse
after
in
year.
journalism.
Is it really?
Yeah. It's like, when I was at the BBC, less than 20% of people from working class backgrounds.
Wow.
It's like the 80% like dominance of middle and upper classes 80%. In almost all the creative industries. It's just like, and it's like the balancing that like Music Venues Trust have pushed the government to bring that levy in to put more money into grassroots music and to venues and to artists. And it just feels so crucial to have like, how else are we going to have music scenes that thrive and that people...
Totally. Think about Oasis this year. What that band means to people is because actually the majority of the people that listen to them are kind of the majority of the people in the UK actually working to middle class people who can really relate and resonate with the stories and the places that artists like that come from. It's so fundamental. And you know, the stories people have to tell are so fascinating. And I'm really passionate about trying to help in any way I can to let people know where I've come from, so that if people are from a small place, that they feel too that they can find a way through. But like you say, it's bigger than that. It's about the structures that are in place to actually help people figure out a pathway forward in those spaces. I have found, quite honestly, that the costs for people I work with, quite rightly, have gone up, you know, in terms of wages, because it's cost of living crisis. It's so difficult. However, my offers have remained the same.
Or gone down slightly.
Slightly.
Which is not to do with your scale, because like I work with the Anchoress, and like Catherine's gone out and done stuff, and it's like you get the offer and it's like, okay, that's about the same as last time, but the price of the Premier Inn, for instance, has gone from 50 quid to 140 quid, and you've got to put 6 people up for the night, and it's
absolutely
like, all of these costs people don't understand from the outside.
No, and that's why it's really difficult, because I understand both sides. When somebody who doesn't have much money can't afford to come to a show, you don't want to price people out. However, I'm at the point as an artist, for an example, where I'm sort of on a cusp where I'm not a small artist. I'm sort of that medium pivotal point where I've put so much money up front into greater production value so that I can give people the best experience. And, you know, when I first moved here in 2009 to London, it felt like there was a trajectory.
So if I was to give you £500 million right now, how would you spend it to improve clubbing and like music scenes? It doesn't have to be on bricks and mortar. You can spend it however you like.
Well, I actually wrote down a few ways recently. Is it okay if I get my phone out? Because I felt like this is quite important. 1 second. My notes app. There are just so many ways, and it's a huge question, I suppose. But
I quite like how, because the question's so big, it's not like if you had £1 million, it's 500 million. It's so big.
I know. I haven't actually broken it down into, you know.
Units. You don't have to.
No.
It's more of a big question, more of a big thinking question. I will send this to Carol Vorderman and get to check your maths.
Oh my God. The Welsh icon that Carol Vorderman is. I wrote down some general ideas, and this is, I guess, inspired by the Music Venue Trust, who do the most amazing work in making sure that venues survive and that up and coming artists can thrive ultimately. One of the things I put down as the first thing was cultural leases. If you don't have the smaller spaces protected with certain leases from closure, I mean, we know this is a huge problem. We know in London, I mean, if Fabric can be threatened, an institution like that in central London, you know, what hope do smaller venues have?
Did that really light a fire in you, the threat of Fabric? I heard you talk about it a few times, and it seems like if it had been the Royal Ballet or Royal Festival Hall, I think culturally people would have felt different. But Fabric means so much to so many people. And it seemed to me like a lot of the times when I've heard you talking about the importance of grassroots culture in music, like that seemed like a really big moment for people. So I think you just assume it's an institution, it's always going to be there.
Oh, it was shocking is the word. And even I therefore looked at my own complacency at that point to be like, wait a minute. Fabric to me felt like a forever thing, you know, and if they can almost be shut down, where does that leave everyone else? So it really, really, I would say, woke me up and made me think about what I could do. So yeah, it was a pivotal moment. Maybe it was supposed to happen to wake us all up and have us think a bit further than those places aren't going to exist if we don't fight for them ultimately. So you
would have protected the lease of a place like Fabric?
Cultural leases, I mean, that's just one place, but I think actually, you know, all of it smaller than that as well.
It's an example.
It's an example of one place that, you know, that kind of thing has helped something survive. But we need to do that with small venues. So I can mention like Neuadd Ogwen and lots of other venues around the UK if you have those cultural leases. And I did go on the BBC talking about when the pandemic happened and Brexit, that it was this toxic concoction of ultimately me having to find out about the numbers. So I didn't even realize myself that music was one of the biggest exports of the UK.